Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 108 of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer. Our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC alongside my guys Ian Schraier, Mike Szabo, Joey Jarzynka on hand with you for another edition of the Primetime Rundown. Of course, our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Be sure to download their newest hit single, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us. You could download it at blackcatsnyc.com or listen to it on any of the following music platforms: Google Play, iTunes, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and also can be heard on SiriusXM satellite radio as well. So a lot of good things up ahead for them. We cannot thank them enough for providing us with our open as always. But let's start off with seeing Ian Schraier for the first time in quite a while, and you know we said this a few times actually, or I said this just before we went live, Ian, is that it's always a treat having you here now because it's like a rare occurrence. It's a lot of good things when you're here.
I wish that we're a little less true, right? It's last week I came down a little ill and thankfully feeling better. And I was thinking, I feel like the last time I was on this show, we were still promoting "Run Rudolph Run" as the song.
I know,
of the Black Cats.
I know. Yeah, that's what we do.
I blink, and the Super Bowl's here, and the NHL trade deadline has come early for a couple of the local teams, and it's an exciting time. I mean, I can't believe football's over this weekend. We're going to start getting into more of a hockey fix, and then start previewing the Major League Baseball season. It's crazy.
I mean, listen, Ian. Look outside now. It was just 60 degrees today, and there's, knock on wood, there's no winter weather in sight. Mike Szabo, look at you. It almost looks like you're at the beach.
Yeah, I mean, you just stole my opening line there. I mean, we really thought, it doesn't feel like Super Bowl weekend. We just had an April day outside, perfect day when you and I would be calling a baseball or softball game where it's 60 degrees. You got the sunglasses going as we got the headsets on and everything, the tent set up and all. It's perfect spring day.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can't thank everyone enough for making us a part of your Friday evening. And of course, for those that are listening on the following audio platforms: Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Odyssey, we cannot thank you enough for listening to us here as an audio podcast. So guys, of course, as Ian brought up, Super Bowl Sunday is upon us in just about 48 hours time. We got a chance to see who is going to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in August, which will come, rather quickly. And as Ian also brought up too, the hockey trade deadline is March 3rd, 2023. And for a couple of local teams, they hit big. So we'll definitely discuss that. And of course, Major League Baseball and the World Baseball Classic. But of course, as we always do, let's start off with football. And of course, Super Bowl Sunday is upon us. Eagles versus Chiefs. Mike, we got a chance to talk with, of course, Glenn Irby from the Eagles Wire, USA Today Sports last week. And of course, we also spoke with 610 KC's Nick Schwartz. His podcast can be found on Odyssey, the host of Cody and Gold out in Kansas City. So, Ian, got to start off with you just because it's been a while since we've seen you, and there's a lot of good things that have happened in football since you were with us, and obviously Eagles Chiefs. As we said off camera, this is going to be our week of predictions, our weeks of discussing it and dissecting it. And now it's Ian's time to dissect and to start us off with what his thoughts are all about here with this. He's obviously favoring the Chiefs, but let's hear what he's got.
Excuse me. First off, that is not necessarily true. Secondly, I actually go back to this whole, it's been a while since I've been on the show. I mean, if people are tuning into the Eastern Observer and following us on social media, they would know that I'm also heavily involved of late in our instant reactions. So
that is very true.
We don't have a live show, which feels like every few weeks these days. We're always getting our content out there to reach out to our viewers and keep them well informed of what we're doing. It's funny. I was just talking to some family members earlier this week about my predictions for the Super Bowl. And I'm sorry, I just have a tickle in my throat. And it's very interesting because they were like, you've got to be rooting for the Chiefs, right? And I'm like, I'm gonna put my Giants bias, my NFC East bias here aside. I mean, this has got to be arguably in terms of seeding, how evenly matched these two teams are. I mean, this has got to be one of the better Super Bowls I think that we're in line to see in a few years. I think this could go right up there, right, with the way the teams are playing and the way they match up. I would say this probably matches up real well to the Kansas City San Francisco Super Bowl we had a few years ago, in terms of the level of competition that we could be seeing. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is on the opposing side of the field to Patrick Mahomes as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo. But the more I struggle with this, I'm leaning, and I know the report today from Rappaport and Schefter was that the Chiefs do not have a single individual on the injury report. Like not even anyone's listed as questionable going into Sunday's game. I'm still leaning Philly here. I really, I think defensively, who's going to keep Patrick Mahomes, who's going to be able to limit Patrick Mahomes is going to make the difference in this game. We really have not had to see Jalen Hurts, who's coming off the injury that he had towards the end of the regular season. We really haven't had to see him step up and play a big role yet in the playoffs. If you really think about it, if you look at the Giant game 2 weeks ago, the game was over by half. 3 weeks ago, the game was over by halftime. You look at the game, the NFC Championship game against San Francisco, Brock Purdy's out by the end of the first quarter. The Eagles are kind of just playing great defense and, flipping field position well and kicking field goals all game, and to a point where they really didn't need to do much offensively. They were doing just fine with running the ball with Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell and letting their defense do all the work. Now we know Chris Jones and everything that Kansas City has going for them on the other side of the field, but when you match up the skill players and you match up who's on the field, obviously the experience of a championship of that championship caliber rests a little more with Kansas City, considering the recent success. But I think ultimately the fact of the matter is that the Eagles defense this year has been nothing short of superb, elite, and I think that makes all the difference in the result that's why for Sunday's game, I'm definitely leaning Philly over Kansas City.
It's wild because you brought up just a few moments ago about, the journey that Jalen Hurts and company have had to take here in this Super Bowl, or rather in this Super Bowl run, and to get to this point. And the Giants essentially did not show up to Philadelphia in the divisional round. And San Francisco, on one sack by Hassan Reddick, takes out their quarterback in Brock Purdy. But the whole thing, though, that, you kind of think about it, and when you say that, yes, they've played great defense or whatnot, but have they played against a Patrick Mahomes who has that Super Bowl experience when only just a grand total of 5 players from Super Bowl 52 are still on this roster? Just 5 players. Now, you look at the experience side of things, right? And obviously, after the loss to Tampa Bay, Kansas City made a lot of adjustments on that offensive line. They made a lot of adjustments, obviously, after Mahomes signed that big contract. So it's not, they don't have the luxury of having a lot of players alongside him, where, like how Jalen Hurts has, right, where they have a massive defense where they're able to pay all these guys and whatnot because Hurts is on his rookie contract and everything like that. But, you think to yourself, well, you have that experience in Kansas City on the other side. Now, doesn't that potentially bode well for their chances? And two, looking at the coaching aspect too, that entire coaching staff is pretty much the same from Super Bowl 54. Anyone want to take that? Ian, take that away.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to go against Andy Reid, right? Also, I think what I wanted to kind of jump into here when you had made the point about going up against Patrick Mahomes is we have not yet had to see, and listen, I'm not discounting the factor that Travis Kelce will play in the Super Bowl. But we have yet to see at the same time Mahomes we really yet to see either of these quarterbacks get tested in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If you think about it, right? I mean, that's no knock on what Cincinnati and Joe Burrow have done the last 2 years. We've really yet to see the receivers also get tested. And when you compare the Chiefs wide receiving corps this past year to maybe the last couple, where instead of I think that's the game we've played with ourselves all season is when is Kansas City really going to suffer the loss of Tyreek Hill? Where is that going to play a factor? And I'm not so sure that it wouldn't mean that Sunday would be the best time, considering the secondary that the Eagles have to run out there to go up against those type of players. I mean, the Eagles are going to have to contain Travis Kelce. I mean, he's going to get his catches. He's probably still going to go up for 7-8 receptions, 105 yards and a touchdown probably. But the whole idea is trying to contain the mobility of Patrick Mahomes, trying to keep guys like Marcus Valdes-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster, who's definitely stepped into a bigger role in the postseason. That's where I'm just kind of leaning differently. I know it's hard to bet against Andy Reid, right? It's hard to bet against the experience. It's hard to bet against potentially a healthy Patrick Mahomes, but there's just something in my gut. And listen, I don't necessarily, and we could sit here and go back to the whole Julian Love, like Nick Sirianni's just inherited this amazing team, and all he's got to do is sit there and a la Larry Coker in the 2001 Miami Hurricanes, just had to sit there and babysit a championship winning team. But like it or not, that's what they are, and they're ready to win. I mean, I have yet to see the Eagles. I mean, fail to show up for a game this year, to be honest with you, whether that was involved Gardner Minshew or not. It's the Eagles, to me, just feel like the more complete team. And that's why, yes, while Kansas City has the clear-cut edge in coaching, I'm not sure if that edge in coaching is going to be enough just to stop everything the Eagles have the ability to do.
Mike Szabo, want to follow up on that?
Yeah, when it comes to coaching, I mean, it's the tale as old as time, student versus the master kind of thing. The Nick Sirianni way back when, Andy Reid's been doing it way longer since I've been alive, and that sort of thing. So
Yes, that's right, Mike. Yes. I was going to say Nick Sirianni has been doing it longer than you've been alive, but go on.
But so yes, as Ian says, the experience level is there for Kansas City. If you want to take it back to Super Bowl 54, it's the Kansas City is like minus a circus play. San Francisco would have won that Super Bowl if not for a 1 in a million circus play, that deep throw to Tyreek Hill and whatnot. Yeah. And then that's where the avalanche all fell and Kansas City wind up winning. So San Francisco is kind of comparable in that the Eagles have just been so fantastic this year defensively, and they've only had one loss this year with the healthy Jalen Hurts. They've been the most consistent team in football all year. So as long as they're able to contain that Kansas City defensive line to the point where they're able to run the ball really well, I don't really see how Kansas City can stop them. I think Patrick Mahomes can make up a lot of deficiencies that your team may have. So I think it's definitely going to be quite the game, but I still think the Eagles wind up coming up with this one. I think they've just been so consistent. They run the ball really well, having all those running backs plus Hurts' running ability. They can run the ball really well against that Kansas City defensive line. I think Philly takes this one.
Well, something else also too, Ian, is that, you brought up about how you've been, you were ill, right? But also a lot of the Kansas City Chiefs players have all of a sudden fallen ill.
Don't even start. I'm so done with that.
And listen, I want to get your thoughts on that in a minute, both of you actually, but from what we've gathered, right? And this is nature, right? You go from a very cold environment, right? And go down, right? And you're in air conditioning and whatever it is when you're coming from 20, 30 degrees or whatever. It's possible. Or is it? What do you got, Ian?
I'm just so tired of this whole narrative. I mean, when we talk about the end of the football season, by the time you reach the Super Bowl, whether these guys have the flu or they're dealing with ankle sprains, I mean, none of these guys come into the end of the football season healthy. Nobody comes in healthy. I mean, they're all struggling through something. I think the you know, if you're telling me guys like Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes and Isaiah Pacheco and all these key players that are going to make the difference for Kansas City is gonna. That's why. But that's why. Didn't this happen a few years ago? I think we were talking off camera. I believe it was with Kansas City or San Francisco or one of the Super Bowls with Tampa Bay. Like and did it matter? Like if I can't remember which team it was. Tampa Bay is the name that sticks out of my head, and Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl. Like I'm not going to sit here and this always happens. Like it's February, guys get sick. Like this is the time of the year. I mean, if these teams, if you're talking about a team like from Philly, if the Eagles all of a sudden who played half their games this season in the Northeast start coming down with a cold before they schlep out to Arizona and play in the dome in in a warmer climate, and their bodies are adapting to the weather and they're getting sick as a result of it. I don't think that's going to change anything, Joey. I think by kickoff, it's a different mindset. You're there to win a football game. I don't even think it's. I'm not saying that it's going to affect their play. I'm not going to sit here and pull a Rob DeLuca and be like, yeah, the flu's going to change everything about this game. But it's I think we're getting a little off base, but at the same time, I think just discussing this as a point is ridiculous. Ultimately, the both teams are going to come to play Sunday. The best team is going to win, and I just think right now that team is Philadelphia, just on the credit alone of they are just the more complete team.
Yeah, so many different factors. Mike, go on.
Joey, Lane Johnson would laugh at you for even suggesting that about the flu stuff with Kansas City. I mean, Lane Johnson would sit there and you're saying you're complaining about a runny nose. Come on now.
And listen, I'm not the one complaining about the runny nose. This was an actual report that came out from inside the Super Bowl bubble.
Yeah, I know, but he would definitely be laughing. I can imagine him reading Twitter and being like, "Oh, really? Now a flu? Have they seen what I've been dealing with?"
Exactly. Yeah, it's true. You think about it and you say to yourself, "Well, okay. I mean, he's got torn abs. And this man is playing still at a high level, throughout the playoffs. It's truly remarkable.
Really well against the defensive player of the year. Like you did not notice that him. Like you didn't have to mention Lane Johnson's name whenever Nick Bosa was matched up against him. Like he just erased him whenever he was on that side. That's the defensive player of the year.
Not even just Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. Like, I mean, even though Fred Warner had that scare with the injury on the first drive of the game in the NFC Championship, but so many players from this dominant, arguably the most dominant and the defense in the NFL this year, just in terms of complete defense, right? And the Eagles silenced them. Yes, I'm sure the loss of Brock Purdy took a toll on every ounce of what San Francisco did that day. Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, the Eagles still had to show up and play.
No. Yeah, right.
And I'm sure this is killing Joey to hear two lifelong Giant fans praising the Eagles like this, but there's not I don't want to say that there's not much to argue. I mean, we've been saying it all year. I've been saying it since week 4, as much as Joey just wants to hate me for praising Jalen Hurts, but that's been the case. The Eagles have won with him. They've won without him. I mean, he wasn't the NFL MVP, and I'm not saying he should have been the MVP. He missed a few games as well, and as the season went on, he started to cool off a little bit more. But they've just been the more complete team all year, and I think I think Kansas City. If we're going to give our score predictions, I think Kansas City, without a doubt, will be within a touchdown. If I had to guess right now, Philly 27, Kansas City 21.
Okay. Well, now I'm going to ask you this, Mike. I'm going to throw it to you because now we've got our thoughts. We've got pretty much everything that we've discussed, which is, throughout the week, we've discussed about the Kelsey brothers. We've spoken about Andy Reid facing off against his old team. Is it the last hurrah for Brandon Graham, for Fletcher Cox, and for Jason Kelsey? For those three, is it the last hurrah? What's the deal with Patrick Mahomes? Is he going to be healthy? Is Devontae Smith going to be the first player since who is it? He would be in a list of just 4 guys to win a national championship in college, a Heisman Trophy, and then also a Super Bowl. He would join a list of 4. I can't remember the names of the guys, but nonetheless, there's so many different storylines. We've covered every single one of them. I think now the time now is Mike, we just have to say our predictions. What do you got for this one?
I think I'm gonna go a little bit higher with this one. Even though both teams I think are pretty evenly matched, it's gonna be a really good game. I'm going Eagles 33, Chiefs 27.
Okay. I'm going to go with a 27-21 score. Eagles win against Kansas City, but it's not going to be easy. And I think also we have no idea about the injuries either. With L'Jarius Sneed, I think is probably the biggest injury that they're dealing with. And again, as Ian pointed out before, they do not have a single player on their injury list, which again is
Neither do
amazing.
the Eagles really either. I think the
Right.
Eagles have one.
Yeah, I think it's just one Britton Covey, which he's just the punt returner. Big whoop. You could put Boston Scott back there. But again, nonetheless, there's like I said, there's a lot of question marks, a lot of whatever. We know the storylines. This is probably going to be one of the better Super Bowls in recent memory. And I'm not saying that as an Eagles fan. I'm saying that just as a putting my bias aside. I think this is going to be not a shootout, but it's going to be evenly matched on both sides of the ball. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, 27-21 Eagles win. They'll win by 6 against the Chiefs. Guys, let's move forward here. Last night was the NFL honors, and there were a lot of surprises. I'll be honest with you. There were a few that I saw that my eyes kind of opened up a bit. We'll read them off here, and we'll go from bottom to top just because we'll leave obviously MVP for last for those that did not know. Head and Shoulders never not working protection play of the year. 49ers tight end George Kittle against the Cowboys. Jim Brown, the rushing leader, was Josh Jacobs. The angry run of the year, Dameon Pierce. Mike, Texans running back against Jacksonville. The Art Rooney Sportsmanship Award is Calais Campbell, Ravens defensive lineman. The AP Assistant Coach of the Year was DeMeco Ryans before he bolted off to Houston as the 49ers defensive coordinator. The Deacon Jones Sack Leader Award was Nick Bosa. I believe he led the league in sacks this year. NFL Fan of the Year was a Seahawks fan.
We're really going off on these awards right now.
Listen, I'm reading exactly what I see here from the NFL honors as well. The Salute to Service Award presented by USAA, Ron Rivera, Commanders head coach. FedEx Air and Ground Players of the Year, Joe Burrow and Josh Jacobs. Walter Payton Man of the Year Award, Dak Prescott. Let's see. Okay, now we get into the Associated Press ones. So AP Defensive Rookie of the Year was Sauce Ahmad Gardner, Jets corner. AP Offensive Rookie of the Year was Garrett Wilson, Jets wideout. AP Defensive Player of the Year was Nick Bosa. AP Offensive Player of the Year was Justin Jefferson. AP Comeback Player of the Year was Geno Smith. AP Coach of the Year was Brian Daboll, which we kind of figured. And AP MVP was Patrick Mahomes. Actually, Mike Szabo, I got to ask you this question first. Who was the one, or what was the one award that stood out to you, whether it be good, bad, whatever it was, that you didn't agree with potentially? No, you're muted.
Comeback Player of the Year, really.
Yeah,
I think the definition of what this award really is just eluded the NFL. Geno Smith was really the most improved player in the NFL. Like, he didn't come back from anything or whatnot. He came back from being a bad quarterback for the last 6 years. That's what he came back from. And, hats off to him. Listen, hats off to him. He went to Seattle this year, and he's revamped his career. He had a great year, a really good, accurate quarterback. He rebuilt his career this year. Hats off to him, not taking anything away from him. But it's not Comeback Player of the Year. That's Most Improved Player of the Year. So it probably suits the NFL better just to make a separate award for just that, and Most Improved Player of the Year, which Geno Smith would have undoubtedly won. I don't really understand Comeback Player of the Year, given what you think the definition really should be.
Ian, I want to throw this one to you. What do you think? Do you agree?
Yes and no, because I understand the definition that Mike is going with there. Because if that were the case, I guess you could have obviously instituted Saquon Barkley in that voting. You could have. There are a couple different routes you could have gone there. Christian McCaffrey could have been certainly another one.
Yep.
You know, I guess I think you had to. I don't want to say yeah. It's really a hard way to put this. Of saying you had to recognize Geno because of the year he had. He had the highest passer rating of any quarterback in football at multiple junctures this season, and I think that goes without saying. The Seattle Seahawks are not in the playoffs without Geno Smith. Would any franchise in 30 years from now, are we going to look back on ourselves and say, can we believe that Geno Smith led a franchise to the playoffs? When the Seahawks were just supposed to be this sputtering franchise that ended up finishing second in their division with teams like the Cardinals and the Rams trailing them. No, I didn't see that coming. So yes and no, right? I understand. I understand where Mike's coming from. I don't think the institution of a most improved award would not be the worst thing in the world. I'm pretty sure the NBA has one. So I don't think, again, that would be that'd be kind of interesting. The award that I think that kind of jumps off the page at me a little bit, and I'm fine with the winner, was Offensive Rookie of the Year. There were a few different players that could have, because the three players that arguably the top vote getters for that award, besides Garrett Wilson, are Kenneth Walker and Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
And when you look at their resumes, the three of them, now remember, this is a regular season award. It does not count postseason. It sure might factor in if they led their team to the postseason, but it does not factor in postseason performance. It's a strictly regular season award. So if you take the sample size of their seasons, Garrett Wilson started off as the hottest rookie in the league. With the Jets, and then kind of cooled off second half of the year as Zach Wilson cooled off.
Right.
Kenneth Walker was up and down on injury.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy didn't get the nod until with about 4 or 5 weeks left in the season.
Yeah.
So, if you're looking, so the reason I'm okay with the winner is because he was arguably one of the most dynamic receivers in the league. But at the same time, if you want to sit there, if they want to sit there and give the award to a player who encompassed an entire season, then Garrett Wilson is the right selection there. But I think I'd be curious to see how the voting finished with Purdy and Walker behind, because obviously Kenneth Walker was such a huge piece to that Seattle offense, in addition to Geno, and everything with Brock at this point is pretty self-explanatory.
To me, though, again, just by looking at this, though, especially with comeback player of the year, I understand that a quarterback will definitely supersede a running back in terms of comeback player of the year, right? Because a quarterback is a lot more, I don't want to say precious to a team, but a lot more valuable to a team as opposed to a running back, right? So
we see a quarterback win MVP every year.
Exactly.
Every year. Unless some defensive player jumps off the page, quarterback is the NFL MVP every year.
Right. And again, the whole thing is that, to me, I look at it where Seattle still had a lot of pieces, right? They still had pieces. And again, I'll say this about the Giants, and it's not anything bad. That the fact remains is that if it was not for Saquon Barkley, in my opinion, they would not have gone to the playoffs. I really don't think so.
I agree.
I think that Daniel Jones, though, has definitely improved. No doubt about it, where he would be able to get them to, because what did they finish? 9-6-1, right?
Yep.
So let's say
9-7-1.
9-7-1. So then he would be, let's say, maybe 7 wins. Let's say 7 wins without Saquon, because he really did well. He performed well under Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll. He really did.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing to me, though, is that Saquon's rushing numbers and just generally what he was capable of doing this season, I mean, again, he came back from another torn ACL. He had his net rush yards was 1,312 yards. Right now, I understand the fact that Geno Smith, he's there. The reason why he got the award was because, again, we brought it up. quarterback is much more valuable than a running back. And you look at some of the numbers here, 4,282 passing yards, which was good for 8th overall in the NFL this season, just behind Josh Allen and Jared Goff. Actually, one yard shy of Josh Allen this year, by the way, in passing yards, which is a pretty good comparison, or a pretty good player to be behind. I just believe that Seattle was not as big of a disaster as the Giants were. I really don't think so. And I think that Seattle still had a good foundation when the Giants had their foundation cracked, and they were able to eventually rebuild it with Saquon Barkley as their number one, in my opinion. But and you know what? Ian's right. The quarterback is always going to be number one wherever it is.
Well, because it's the most valuable position in any sport, but also like Justin Jefferson was the offensive player of the year, right?
That's right.
But like you could make the argument, right? Even though, to Mahomes' credit, I don't think that there was a more valuable quarterback to their team this year in terms of the talent around. If you look at the whole picture, including skill players, that there probably wasn't a more valuable quarterback to their team this year than Patrick Mahomes, arguably. Can you name? I mean, I don't want to say can you name one, but I'm like, when you take the full picture, tight end, offensive line, wide receiver, running back, and everything around them, could you name someone who did more with less?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think to myself, I would then have to go with with that. I think to myself, Daniel Jones.
But he's not the MVP. I mean, like here's my thing. I think the most valuable player of the NFL this year, hands down, was Justin Jefferson. Minnesota is nothing. Minnesota is nothing without him. I mean, like let's look at it that way. Like when you say the word most valuable player, the way I've always had it kind of explained to me is that if you're the most valuable player of the league, right, you are the one player that is irreplaceable to your team. And I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes isn't in Kansas City, but take Justin Jefferson out of Minnesota, Detroit probably wins the NFC North or Green Bay, right? Yeah. Take Patrick Mahomes out of Kansas City. I'm not saying plug Chase Daniel in there and everything doesn't change, but like that's where my issue with the whole MVP voting lies, because it's not a rigged system, but it's predicated on quarterback's the most valuable position in sports. What quarterback did the most with the least? And in that case, it's Patrick Mahomes. But I do think that, like, if you want to ask me who my MVP is this year, it's Justin Jefferson. But you know, I mean, they're not going to sit there and they're not going to nitpick and clip at every single play and say, okay, how many plays was Justin Jefferson overthrown? How many plays did he go down and make a nice play going to his knees? You know, all these type of things that would incorporate in their voting. But that's just, I guess, that's the way you plug away at the NFL, right? It's quarterback. It's not going to.
Yeah. I mean, plus they're always going to favor Mahomes too, and that the one thing this year that I think he finally had to prove was what can he do without Tyreek Hill, and he proved that.
And also remember, coming into the year, the AFC West was determined to be the biggest shootout division of it all.
Yes,
you had Justin Herbert in LA, you had Russell Wilson in Denver, you had Josh McDaniels now coaching with Derek Carr, and arguably one of the best, as Joey alluded to, with all the awards Josh Jacobs won. I mean,
and Devontae Adams too. Don't forget him too.
And Devontae Adams, right? So, like, in terms of like a shootout division, this was supposed to be the division that every fantasy football player was supposed to invest in to say, this is where I'm going to get my points. Right. And still, Kansas City, subtracting sans Tyreek Hill, Kansas City still wins the division.
Truly amazing. And now they're also in the Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill. It just shows.
Right.
How good Mahomes really is, and also how good of a coach Andy Reid is too, where he's able to get everyone aligned and whatnot, and whatever the case is. But this is something else too, fellas. This is one thing that we did not say that was announced in the NFL honors last night, but the Pro Football Hall of Fame 2023 class features a whole bunch of players that Mike never saw. And he never saw Rondé Barber. He never saw Darrelle Revis. He never saw Joe Thomas. Never saw Zach Thomas. Never saw DeMarcus Ware. And forget about the seniors.
Do you know what team Zach Thomas played for?
No.
Oh,
I saw Darrell Revis. That one we can omit.
Oh, I'm done.
Darrell Revis. I was 10 years old.
That's one of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacker to ever play in Miami.
Zach Thomas.
Man.
Zach Thomas is long overdue for a Hall of Fame. Did
you see his video reaction, man? He could not hold back the tears.
Yeah, well, I mean, because how many times has he passed up?
Yeah.
He retired in 2008, I think, right? 2007, 2008, give or take.
Mike was only 2 years old then.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then when Rondé Barber retired, Mike was the size of, like I said, a centipede. So
from my sports memory, probably I was 2 years old. I can't remember anything.
Might still be playing then.
Yeah. That's so true. But Joe Thomas, DeMarcus Ware, those guys, they're first ballot Hall of Famers, and the same thing went with Darrell Revis as well. The senior guys, Don Coryell, Chuck Howley, Joe Klecko, and Ken Riley are the 4 seniors and coach contributors that make up the Hall of Fame class of 2023, a total of 9 players. Ian, since obviously Mike is, going through a historical lesson right now with us, Zach Thomas is, in my opinion, I think, like I said, he retired in 2007, 2008, one of the best linebackers that has ever played in Miami. And
the best.
Right. If not the best, and one of the best linebackers ever to play the game. Again, this is something that I think is long overdue and should have happened years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think the case with Zach Thomas is, unfortunately, he unfortunately played during an era of Miami football that was just consumed by New England and Tom Brady.
Yep.
That really, I believe he only, and check the stats for me if I'm wrong here, Joey. I think he only went to the playoffs once, and that was the year that, if I'm not mistaken, was 2008, which was the Brett Favre year. Sorry, again, Mike, historical lesson for you. Brett Favre's year in with the Jets. That was the year that Brady went down and Matt Castle started. And as a result, Chad Pennington beat the Jets in week 17. And the Miami Dolphins under Tony Sparano with the Wildcat offense won the AFC East. And I'm pretty sure that was his only appearance in the playoffs, though he was probably got to be a perennial Pro Bowler every year he probably played in the league, in terms of not even Pro Bowler, but an All-Pro at his position. I mean, Joe Thomas, arguably one of the best left tackles to ever do it. Darrell Revis, it's so funny, Darrell Revis. Oh man, and I just know people that are just still so bitter over him going to New England as Jet fans, and when they had inducted him into the Jets Ring of Honor this year, to be like, there's no way I'm going. He's a traitor. He went to New England. He went there. Give me a break, man. Like, do you guys make it to 2 AFC championship games without him? Like,
no.
So like, just kind of go down the list. And I'm so happy for Joe Klecko. Joe Klecko was, talk about, your era of successful Jet teams, and especially in the 1980s. Air Coryell, the former head coach, who really reinvented the game of football, and really he's the reason the NFL is the passing league it is now. That all started with Dan Fouts. With the then San Diego Chargers. Mike, were you alive when the Chargers were in San Diego?
No shot. Qualcomm Stadium. He has no idea.
It never gets old. We're gonna lose viewers every time we just give Mike a historical lesson.
I know.
But that Air Coryell, man, that goes back to the whole San Diego Chargers. I mean, he's the man who reinvented football the way we know it today. So it's very happy with this Hall of Fame class, and obviously DeMarcus Ware has been giving me nightmares since I'm a kid in the NFC East, and especially with his fantastic career with the Cowboys.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. And Joe Thomas, you want to talk about a player who really never saw the playoffs with the Cleveland Browns? My goodness. But guess what? He was one of the best. How
many legendary quarterbacks did he protect?
Oh, he had to have protected like 27. That's where I would go. I don't know. He's protected so many. Brandon Whedon. Oh man. Cleveland Browns legend Brandon Whedon, EJ Manuel, Cleveland Browns legend EJ Manuel.
Where's DeLuca and Casey when you need him?
I need it, but Zach Thomas, Ian. Just to go back to your point, he played in a total of 8 playoff games,
Oh, wow.
1997, 1998, 1999, 2000, and 2001. They made the playoffs. And that was
Wow,
it.
I didn't realize that.
That was it. Yeah. And then 2008.
Yeah, 2008, right?
2008. No, 2008. He had just left to go to the Dallas Cowboys, where they finished 8-8.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like kind of take myself back to like the end of the 90s, early 2000s Dolphins,
Yep.
and I'm trying to, because Brady's first year was 2000. Brady's Super Bowl year was 2000.
Right.
So his first Super Bowl year. So yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense because that would be who was even the start? Who was the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins during that era? Because it was right after Marino. Was that some combination of like Ray Lucas and?
Now we're gonna have to look this up. Let's see. We've
All
got
right,
it right.
I'm curious who the QB was back then.
Well, 90. I think when did Marino retire? 99 or 2000? He was done.
Maybe I was gonna say it's got to be right at the end of the Marino era. So
Yeah,
maybe he was still there.
All right. So yeah, that sounds about, because I remember Marino was, I think, 2001, 2001.
Wow, is that late?
Yeah. Oh, Jay Fiedler.
Jay Fiedler, there you go.
Yeah, Lamar. Yeah. Oh no, Lamar Smith. That was running back. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Thurman Thomas was a part of that team too. That was towards the tail end of his career.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah,
Nice little history lesson for me there.
And you know who the coach of that team was? Wow, Dave Wannstedt.
Yes, sir, Dave Wannstedt, future Chicago Bears legend and future University of Pittsburgh head coach.
That's right. That's right. Mike's head is absolutely spinning and probably exploding at these names.
Mike, if you want, we'll just take over for the next like 20 minutes.
What I take away from this historical lesson is that better late than never, but the NFL Hall of Fame has so much less drama. Check.
Oh, Mike, Pro Football Hall of Fame, my man. We got to get you to Canton, Ohio.
Oh, man. Let me tell you something. Mike, that was one of, and again, even though for me that trip was nearly 17 years ago already, right? 17 years ago, I was out in Canton for Troy Aikman's induction, as well as Reggie White's induction, as well as Thurman Thomas, Harry Carson. I was there for. That was one of the coolest atmospheres I was ever at, and you need to go there too.
I will say this though, when you don't go, if you're not going Hall of Fame weekend, it's probably one of the most underwhelming Hall of Fames you can visit.
That is, yes, I'd have to agree.
Yeah,
I would 100%.
It's a little underwhelming. I'm not going to lie.
That is definitely true. If I can remember correctly, yes. But there was you were
there during a different time though. It may you've got an unfair advantage there.
When did you go?
I was there in 2010, but I wasn't there for Hall of Fame weekend.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We were my Christine and I, we were traveling from Pittsburgh to Cleveland, and we stopped in Canton in between on the way up.
Yes, and yeah, I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, Mike Szabo, you have to you have to pretty much get out of your house, I think is really the way to go.
Baby steps. I checked off the bucket list of going to an NFL game, so now here's the next step.
Look at you. I was gonna say the next thing, like I said, then we just have to get you out of the Happy Meal era.
No, I'm just telling you, I'm not driving them there.
Yeah. Oh man, Mike, get on a plane for once in your life. All right. Let's keep on rolling here. And obviously with the NFL, there's so much to talk about. But again, we've hit on every single topic. But I think something that we need to discuss, though, okay, fellas, is this. Guess who's back in the United States? Cliff Kingsbury. He's back. He's not in Thailand anymore because his lady friend decided to skip town. And he is meeting with the Houston Texans to potentially work on the staff of DeMeco Ryans. Where is our guy Kyle Madsen when we need him? But you know what?
He'll be a coordinator. He doesn't have to ruin the Texans just yet.
He might not even be good enough to be a coordinator. He might just be like an assistant or something along those lines. But you know what, though? This is something else, right? And we know.
I mean, he's going to get the Joe Judge treatment. He'll become an offensive assistant.
He might, coordinator. Heck, he might be backup water boy at this point.
Oh my gosh!
Listen, I think the big thing here is that he's interviewing with the Texans, and this is something that I just say to myself, I haven't figured out a name of it yet, right? We know the Chargers are always going to Charger, right? That's really what we figured out. Can the Texans always Texan? I guess would be the
I
like
mean,
I don't
I guess they'll play in the Saturday 4:30 game. That's how
right.
Texans.
And the thing though is that again, all joking aside, is that open offensive coordinator position is go to say that's what Cliff Kingsbury flew back to the States for, was to interview for that position. In my opinion, I guess. What the hell are you thinking, D'Amico Ryans? But hey, listen, you want to start off your tenure with a horrendous hire? Go right ahead. Something else that we do know with Houston is that Matt Burke is expected to be hired as the defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans under D'Amico Ryans. Do we expect him to be the play caller? We really don't know for what's going to happen on the defensive side of things. We expect probably D'Amico to still be doing that, but nonetheless, that is something there that we will have to monitor. Guys, something else too, which is really a sad state of affairs. We know how good Taylor Lewan was with Tennessee as the left tackle. He's expected to be cut in the next couple of weeks from Tennessee, and we know about how Jack Conklin was a big deal there, kind of like that two-headed monster on the tackle side of things when it was Marcus Mariota, and then it was Ryan Tannehill in the beginning of the year, but then just too much money went to those tackles, and they obviously had to choose between Conklin and Lewan. And Lewan just tore his ACL, actually. I believe it was against the Giants, actually, in week 1 this past year. So, he's had an injury-riddled few years, and he's now just going to cost way too much money. But it's really sad, Ian, because we remember about, like, really after Joe Tom, and see, it does come full circle. After Joe Thomas retired, all eyes really in that region shifted over toward Taylor Lewan and Jack Conklin.
Yeah, I mean, from an NFL perspective, I mean, if you look at like kind of some of the franchise left tackles of that time, I don't want to say of that time because it's not that many years ago, but like Trent Williams be another name. Now obviously he's in San Francisco. Do you want to go back and throw Jason Peters' name in that mix? Do you want to David Bakhtiari? But I think in terms of, yes, I mean, I remember when the Titans, if I'm not mistaken, it was in back-to-back years in the first round that they drafted Lewan and Conklin. So like they had solidified, done what so many Giant fans wish they would have done themselves in terms of drafting a left tackle and a right tackle year after year that many years ago and established that kind of success like they did in Tennessee. But yeah, no, it's unfortunate to hear he's going to get cut. I mean, we'll see I'm sure somebody will pick him up. He's got 2 years of experience. When he's healthy, he's one of the best left tackles in the league. Should he not get picked up, I'm sure there are plenty of teams that would love to move him inside and pay him at a lesser price tag. But that's still about a month away now. So we'll see what happens. But unfortunate news in terms of the career of Taylor Lewan, just in terms of his time in Tennessee, appears to be up.
Mike, do you even know who Taylor Lewan is?
Don't do this to me, please.
No comment.
Oh, man. All right. Well, Mike, we'll have to just throw this over to you instead. Who do you think is going to be the Cardinals' next head coach? Do you have any idea?
I was going to ask him who's going to be on Sesame Street.
Kafka. That's who it's going to be. Well, the Giants will be shopping for a new offensive coordinator next week, probably.
I'll say this. I do think that once the Super Bowl is over, Shane Steichen will be the next head coach in Indianapolis, though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I'd have to agree with you there. Yeah. It's the writing is pretty much on the wall there. And they indirectly said it is that, Steichens is a finalist for the job. And, you looked at the other names
after Wink Martindale is no longer being looked at.
Right, Wink Martindale, but then you also look at the other guys, Aaron Glenn, the former defensive coordinator in
New York Jets legend, man. New York
exactly, yes.
New York Jets legend.
Detroit Lions defensive coordinator. It's not, and then the interim tag on Jeff Saturday. Yeah. I think the chances are pretty good that it's going to be Steichen, but we'll have to wait and see.
I
We'll
think Jim
find out.
Irsay knows what it takes to run that franchise the right way. It's obviously the Colts have kind of fallen on bad times here the last couple of years, but they always seem to find a way to in that division, especially unless it now all of a sudden becomes Jacksonville's division. And I don't think in my lifetime I would ever say those words, but they finally got the right head coach at the wheel.
I think it is their division, is for sure.
I don't disagree, but I think at the same time, I think it's been Indy's division for a while, and I think when they when you hear things like the Colts are really struggling to do anything right, he's got to step in and make and do what's right, because they've just been a franchise that's been predicated on success and winning division titles and contending for the AFC South repeatedly.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure that they get the right head coach in there, even though Jeff Saturday would be quote unquote the sexy pick, right? You're taking that alum, your franchise center that played with Peyton Manning, and I mean, you're basically, you might as well be hiring Peyton to coach your franchise in the eyes of Colts fans, but that doesn't necessarily make him the best X's and O's guy either.
Yeah. Guys, let's move forward. We brought up about the hockey trade deadline, the National Hockey League, March 3rd. That is, I believe, the first Friday in March, which oddly enough is, I think, in like 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks or something along those lines. Insanely quick. It's rolling around, folks. The New York Rangers traded just yesterday for Vladimir Tarasenko and defender. Defender. See, I'm in soccer mode too. Defenseman Nico Mikkola from St. Louis for a first-round pick and a conditional fourth, as well as prospect as well, and Sammy Blais. So I want to start with Mike here, because Mike did well at the podium. He did really well at the podium. He does a decent job coaching the team as well. But in all seriousness, though,
again, GT, call him MS or whatever we want to refer to him as.
There you go. Right. This was, I believe, and I hate to say this was a fantastic deal. They got him on the cheap. And St. Louis even retained 50% of his salary too, which leaves about $1.6 million left to play with before the March 3rd trade deadline. This is a big deal. He just scored a goal just a few minutes ago against Seattle, against San Jose Sharks legend Martin Jones. So it's a good start.
Well, I don't think you could ever erase this completely, but Chris Drury tried to do everything he could to erase the black mark that was the Pavel Buchnevich trade, I guess. That it wound up in hindsight turning out to be really bad. I do not claim that was an error on my part there. That was a computer error that led to that trade and whatnot. So I don't take any credit for that, just to continue the Photoshop meme.
Oh, I was so confused. I'm like, wait, where are you?
Yeah, I'm like, I really did not set that up well, honestly. I really
okay.
But
well,
yeah,
technically, technically, this is Gerard Gallant, so you're actually the coach of the team. But close, good. Go on.
Give him another month, and Aaron Boone will be right out there on the show.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you see, that's it. It's a wrap. Yeah, he's almost getting ready to be a savage. Go on.
So I think from a lot of Rangers fans, it was a great day in that last week. Sammy Blais era has not really gone well in the New York Rangers at all.
It's really not gotten well. I think that's an understatement.
It's an understatement. He didn't score a goal like in 50 plus games. So just starting
to Donald Brashear wearing number 91, but we continue.
Yeah, I mean, he just to start off on that point in the trade, most people looking for him just to purely be cut and for nothing and whatnot, and Drury's able to attach him to a trade to two guys in Tarasenko and Mikkola, who are really going to contribute to this team going forward. He's already off to a good start, as you mentioned, scoring earlier on today. I think it was a really good move for the Rangers in that you were going to have to give up a first-round pick. That's fine. You have two of them, so you have some room to play with there. I don't think they really overpaid and whatnot. I think Tarasenko, he's not the player maybe he was 5 years ago. A lot of people aren't as they start getting up into their 30s in hockey, but he's still a really quality NHL player. You think being on a better team with some more playmakers and whatnot, the goals total will come up. I think it's just a really good deal to solidify their top six. As we looked at the practice lines this morning, that top six looked a lot better, a lot more well-rounded out. You're able to slide people down. The depth looks much better and whatnot. And defensively also, we knew they were going to have to go out and get some defensive help, some more depth there. And Mikkola now a more veteran defenseman in the league compared to what the rest of the core that they had after the top four guys. And he'll be there to help shore up Schneider on the third pairing and provide some more depth and experience. So I think the Rangers made out with a really solid deal. They didn't seriously overpay. So hats off to Chris Drury. Good bit of business yesterday.
Ian, I got to throw this over to you. What are your thoughts?
I think the one thing about this year's Rangers team, and I think you could find any Ranger fan that would dispute otherwise, is they've been very Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, for a team that's looking like they're going to be back in the playoffs, they're a very Jekyll and Hyde team. There's days that the top six look like they're going to put up 3-4 goals a night. Then there's nights where they don't even show up, and players like Alexis Lafreniere have been maybe not healthy scratches, but have been downgraded to the third line. Vitaly Kravtsov, he's been up and down all season. These were two players, obviously one of them being a number 1 overall draft pick in Lafreniere, who you're still waiting to find his game. Thankfully for the Rangers, the two big players that have really stepped up their game this year have been Capo Caco and Filipino. That's made the difference for the subtraction, but also, Kreider's gone missing at times. Panarin especially has gone missing at times. I mean, the Rangers' best offensive player this year, hands down, has got to be Mika Zibanejad, and it's not close. So that's why I'm saying there are days where they've been very Jekyll and Hyde, and I think what bringing in a quality player like Mike said in Tarasenko, what that is going to do is it stabilizes the top six, and it takes more pressure off the top line. It gives Artemi Panarin his Russian buddy. They've already scored a goal tonight. Tarasenko had the first goal of the game. They lead 3-0 after one. Allows and now you keep the kid line together, which has a lot of chemistry. You're now gonna no longer have, say, Lecision out there on the fourth line. Now you can finally move Barclay Goodrow back to the line that he's supposed to play on alongside Jimmy Vesey and Julien Gauthier. So it seems like what this trade did was it kind of put them in the same position where it did last year at the trade deadline. And obviously Tarasenko being a much better player in terms of his resume than, say, Andrew Kopp, Tyler Mott,
Frank Vetrano.
Frank Vetrano, they took pieces and plugged away, and they worked. I mean, a player of Tarasenko's caliber, you're supposed to say we plug him in right away, and that's going to give us our top line player that, especially at right wing, was the area where Ranger fans were begging Chris Drury to do something, and that's really what is the key piece of this, is that they needed. I mean, it's crazy to think with all the players that they have at their disposal, that they needed another elite scorer. But that's what they needed. I mean, this is a team that I don't care who they matched up against. I did not see if the Rangers didn't do something like this at the deadline, which we thought they were going to anyway. I didn't really see the Rangers making it out of the first round this year. I really didn't, with the team as constructed pre-Tarasenko, because we're halfway. We've got 30 games left, and there are just key players on this team that are still not producing at the consistent level that you want to see them at. Hopefully, the acquisition of Tarasenko, and finally with the acquisition of Mikkola, with giving them a left-handed defenseman that they've also so desperately needed, will hopefully kind of glue this together and keep, as long as they stay healthy, allow them to make a deeper run into the playoffs.
See, but that is the thing, and you said that perfectly, Ian, if they stay healthy. Now, they only have $1.6 million left to play with, and we said this off in our group chat as well, is that something that I look at, right? They're in cap hell, and we've known that come the end of this year, they have to find a way to re-sign Filipino. They have to find a way to shore up that or to keep that kid line together, and to keep the centers 1 through 4 together, because as we've known for pretty much even this year too, when
That's
they
what worked
signed
for the Rangers last year, Joey. That's
right,
exactly what worked for the Rangers last year. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
right, exactly, yeah, and it worked last year. But the thing also to me is that you're going to probably see more of these deals year after year until the cap goes exponentially higher by Chris Drury, and it kind of raises the question of, is he done for the rest of this year, and say, all right, this is what we're going to go with, because we may have to save some things for the next year too, because chances are we're going to go into next year with the same exact problem as we did this year, because we don't have the money to not only re-up Tarasenko, which the Rangers do not have the money to do so, because they expect that money to go towards Filipino when the $3.5 million or whatever comes off the books, when that dead money, that's going to go towards Hedel. But then you also have to re-sign a few other guys too, right? That's something else too that is really key here, is that, all right, they're going for it, but Mike, do they have that ability, or do they have the assets to trade away? And will they trade those assets away, or do they potentially save it maybe for the offseason to shore up that right wing for years to come? Or are they going to play this game of, all right, we're going to trade for a right winger every trade deadline?
I think what Drury's done well in that he's known that they're in this cap situation, just like last year. They knew they're going to go out and acquire expiring contracts, so it's not going to really burden them long term on the cap. So I think he never really, this trade was never with the intention that, oh, we're signing Tarasenko long term. They know that's not going to happen. That's not the situation that they're in. This is a pure rental, no matter what happens, and you hope you eke out every bit of great hockey that we know, based on his track record that Tarasenko has. Maybe they do. I think in terms of trading those assets every deadline and whatnot. Hopefully it's not for that much longer. I guess you're kind of hoping, the Rangers in Toronto or something like that, they go farther and the escrow gets paid off quicker than you'd hope, and the cap starts going up. Maybe that's all Drury can pay for. So maybe it's not 3 years that he has to keep on doing this. Maybe it's only 2.
But does that affect them now? But does that affect them now for a potential future move, because he still has 1.6 million to play with? How much, or whoever it is, what assets will it cost, and do they want to do that the rest of the way, or save it till next year?
Well, right now they still have they still have another first round pick. I don't think that in terms of space on the roster and the cap space, is there really anybody out there that they're going to go and get that's going to cost them the first round pick, honestly? So probably I
don't foresee them, Chris Drury, at this point, looking at least at years down the road as we get into 23, 24, 25, him starting to continue to trade picks. They're going to have to make clear-cut decisions on guys like Alexis Lafreniere. They're going to have to make clear-cut decisions on guys like Vitaly Kravtsov. Eventually, they're going to have to pay K'Andre Miller. Eventually, they're going to have to pay, like this offseason, Filipino. They're going to have to potentially pay, if he keeps his game up like this, Capo Caco. I don't think Chris Drury, even when they had signed Artemi Panarin to that big contract, I don't think that their vision, even if you go back to Jeff Gorton and JD's decision-making to go through that whole rebuild to allow them to only compete for 1, 2, maybe 3 years, the window is supposed to be a lot longer than that. So I'm not sure, Joey. That's a great question. And I know Joey is always the cap guy, and understandably so. Like he's reading the tea leaves, and as well he should. I don't know what the next move for them really is at this point. I mean, the window is open for them right now. Clearly, they're going for it. But also, this isn't something with these young players that they could just decide, we're going to cut bait here, get rid of Panarin, get rid of Kreider, get rid of, all these players that are making high cap, and we're going right back into rebuild mode. So he's going to have some tough decisions he's going to have to make. I mean, granted, they've got guys like Matthew Robertson waiting in the wings in Hartford, but eventually, it really all depends. Can they dump Zach Jones on somebody the way they did with Nils Lundqvist? Like these are things that these are some big decisions he's going to have to make come the offseason, especially because we're going to be right back in this same position of deciding who's going to fortify that top 6, or are we right back here all over again come next February or March?
Exactly. Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
I think the difference, the thing also is that the reason why they whether it's last year or this year they're trading picks too is you're still biding time for those kids, whether it's the kid line, and certainly Hedo's come through. Lafreniere and Hedo and Kako, I'm sorry, have broken through. I don't think as consistently as Hedo throughout the year. They've had their spurts and moments.
They're not going to keep a player, Mike, like Matthew Robertson, who's expected to be a top 4 defenseman for the Rangers in the future, down in Hartford for an extended period of time. That's the whole thing. Like maybe in the offseason, this whole Ben Harper, like although they extended him, maybe he comes in and fills that final third defensive pairing spot. I don't know. It's a tough sell, but because the thing is they're looking to stay competitive long term. But how are they going to do so with the cap?
Well, that's the thing. That's the last 2 seasons, whether it's last year or now. The reason why they trade picks is they're still believing in some of these kids, whether it's on the forward line or defensive line. But next year, you're probably starting to say some of the clock may be starting to run out on some of these guys if the jury is still out, or if they aren't as good. Whether that is the Kratzoffs or that is the kid line or whatnot, depending on how they continue to develop. If they, if they develop much better and they're really good players, it's going to be, okay, how we're going to pay them, how we're going to fit into this. What's the cap casualty here and there and whatnot. And that's where you see them maybe not trading picks. It's like Ian said, they'll just be trading some of the players.
So this is something else too, and I know Ian knows this, right? Mike was not born around the Alexander Semin to Carolina time and whatnot, but Ian, you remember, right, when Carolina was so loaded on defense, right?
Yep.
And they did not have the forwards, right? Because they were still in the time when they really could not attract those big free agents, right? And when they had gotten Alexander Semin, they're like, all right, this is the jump start that we need, but we're drafting the defenseman. They drafted Brad Pesce, Slavin, Jacob Slavin as well. They had a whole plethora of guys. Look, they also had Adam Fox too, right? That was a big deal. They had gotten Adam Fox too, and they had way too many defensemen, right? So now you kind of say to yourself, well, the Rangers, they have a lot of prospects that they really have not, first off, auditioned yet, which I think is truly key. And I would not be surprised if the Rangers at some point, and I don't expect them to do it now, because now it's February 10th, you're in the midst of this playoff race, and you can't be playing with these guys' entry-level contracts and whatever the case is, right? Or could you? I don't think so, unless there's barring a massive injury, right? You at some point would have to say, all right, we're gonna test these kids out, and we're gonna use them as trade bait, and potentially you might have to go down that route as opposed to trading those picks and doing what Carolina did years ago and, trade those guys for a forward, or trade a couple of big time prospects for one big forward that has some control, right? Which is similar to what the Devils have now. They've got a ton of prospects that they built up, and now they're probably going to go trade for Timo Meier. But that leads us into our next point, which of course is Rob DeLuca, our old co-host here. He says, quote, "The time for the Rangers to strike is now, but it's not there yet. More moves need to be made, but as Mr. Cap over there points out, the Rangers are a little tight on space. Yes, 1.6 million tight. That being said, the Tarasenko move is solid. The change of scenery will likely only benefit him. We know Szabo is heartbroken that Kreider will be taken off the top
line for like a month. I'm way over the heartbreak. He's been off the line for top line for quite a while.
Mr. Inevitable simply cannot do that. And Ian,
it doesn't matter what line.
Ian, Kreider and Ian, they're synonymous.
I mean, listen, now I want to go back here to what DeLuca said here. And for those that are watching, I just want to pull up exactly what he said here. Is that the Rangers' time to strike is now? Yes, but it's not there yet. More moves need to be made. Yes. But with what though? That's the whole thing. And do you want to give up that future now when you may need it next year? Ian, I want to throw it to you. You had brought up about potentially a cap prediction.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I was saying I kind of wanted to, even though as the diehard Islander Ranger despiser that you are, Joe,
Sure.
you wanted to, we have the same conversation the last couple of years, because ever since Artemi Panarin got signed to that big contract, we knew where the Rangers were going to stand with regards to paying these prospects.
Yeah.
So, let's put you in the hot seat as a Rangers general manager, Chris Drury.
Yeah.
What is your, I don't want to say long-term because it's not long-term, but I would say as we look towards this offseason and the following offseason, what are your predictions with what Rangers currently have, and where do you feel moves need to be made?
Well, this is for starters. Your number one right winger needs to come from outside the organization. But again, at what cost is that going to be? And I wouldn't be surprised if it's someone that is and at this rate, they're going to try and go from someone within the organization to try and save that space, to also try and save those prospects. But again, if your time is to win now, you have to package some guys, and you're going to have to make a trade. There's no doubt about it. You're going to have to get some guys, a guy with control. To answer your question fully, I look at this roster and I say to myself, there's 4 guys: Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, and Trocheck, who all have no movement clauses, not modified or any no trade clauses, no movement. Now that scares me. Those 4 scare me. Now I understand why Vinny Trocheck was given that, because he wanted the term and he wanted the security, right? So you would think, but the problem though is that no movements are handed out like hotcakes now. And that's not, I'm not really a fan of that. I don't like that. Now I get the players want the security. I understand it. But I look at this roster and I say to myself, right wing needs to be fixed. And also if Barclay Goodrow can have some line mates, then he's fine as a fourth center, right? Right. That's no problem. And then you have you have a 1 through 4, right? And that's what the Rangers have been struggling with for quite a while. For quite a while, they've been struggling from top to bottom. Now, you look at the third line center and you look at Philip Hedl, right? Who right now is making $2.3 million, but he's RFA eligible with arbitration. So you figure, give or take, he'll make about $4 million, right? So he makes $4 million times however much. But then you also look, Alexis Lafreniere needs a new contract too. He's only making $925. So, okay, he makes about $2 million, right? So $3.5 million comes off. 3.5 or 3.7 for Tarasenko comes off. That's about $7-ish million. Kravtsov comes off. That's $875. Julian Gauthier comes off. That's 1.6. So that's what, close to 10 million, give or take.
Nine change, yeah.
Right, exactly. Mikkola comes off 2. Jaro Halak comes off 2. 2 and 2. That's 3.5. So 3.5, and that is what? That's about 13-14 million, give or take. So, the problem that I have here is that, again, these guys need to get paid, and they're going to get paid lots of money. They're going to get paid lots of money, but can you afford to pay, some of these guys? Can you afford to pay some of these guys? I don't know. And you're going to have to pay for a backup goaltender too. 1.5 again for Jaro Halak, I think, was a lot of money.
Yep.
But he's worth every penny right now. I think Mike, he's won 6 straight or something along those lines.
Yeah, with a goals against average of about 2.
Right, 6 straight. Yeah, exactly. So he's done pretty well. And it's either, do you move on to another backup? What do you do there? You're probably going to have to go cheaper. You're probably going to have to go cheaper on your backup goaltender since you've got Igor. But again, and I said this the moment that Artemi Panarin signed in Manhattan, is that contract at some point is going to bite them. And this was before COVID happened. So before all of the escrow and before all of everything. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I just dropped my water. So I'm kind of drying this up here so I don't ruin anything. So, figures. This is called karma for being the Rangers hater that I am. So, but yeah, so basically what it comes down to is they need they need a lot of things to go their way, and they're going to have no choice but to start trading their prospects, because I think trading picks, we've seen it with Toronto. And I think that's honestly a really good comparison. You keep trading picks over and over again, your prospect pool depletes. If you want to try and stay in the times and keep your prospect pool growing, you trade away the prospects, and then you have a solid draft. And I get it's sometimes a win-lose, or it's a very questionable thing, because you can flop on the draft, right? And you could still have the players, or you could trade away the players, flop on the draft, and then you're screwed either way.
Correct.
But you have to take that chance. That's a very big deal. You have to take that chance. And that's the route that I see.
Well, that's my big question. That was really the question I wanted you to answer, Joey, was really because it seems like they're more in a position where they'll probably have to trade prospects for something bigger.
You have to.
Than try to hang on to some of these guys, because the whole plan of this whole entire rebuild, with the letter that Jeff Gordon had constructed at the time and told Ranger fans, stick with us. It's going to be a tough few years, but it's going to take about 4 years, but we're going to get where we want to be. And Chris Drury was part of that administration, and now with him taking over, I can't imagine that the vision, whether or not how much involvement James Dolan has not probably changed much. So I mean, the whole idea is not to have Vinny Trocheck and Artemi Panarin and Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad and all these highlight players on the same team that fill your top six with a kid line of a number 1 overall draft pick, a number 2 overall draft pick, and then you pay Barclay Goodrow, and say to yourselves, okay, well, if we just we made it to the Eastern Conference Final, maybe if we get to the second round this year, we could just package that up and say, okay, it's time to just start over again. I think Ranger fans would riot. So it's the plan here was for this team to compete over a window of, kind of in a similar way to the Tampa Bay Lightning, 6, 7, 8 years. And I think they're going to have to make some type of move. And I think I agree with you, Joey, where it's going to be what type of player they're going to try to go out and acquire, and what prospects is it going to cost them to do.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate too that, and again, there are times when I like to be right, but this time for Rangers fans, again, I do not envy what you guys are going through. When it comes to navigating the cap around Artemi Panarin. And that is exactly what you're doing here, because he's being paid $3.1 million more than Mika Zibanejad. So is Panarin worth it? Yeah, I believe that he is worth it. But when they signed him, to try and jumpstart that rebuild. And they tried to jumpstart that retool. And I think that it was one of those, all right, I don't want to call it a desperation move, but it might have just been that for Jeff Gordon, kind of like, all right, well, one final thing, or one final signing, we're gonna bring him in. And listen, he's done well. He has done well, but we have seen times this season when he's only done well on the power play and he can't get anything done 5-on-5. And you need someone to get the job done 5-on-5. And again, I don't want to sit here and praise Lou Lamoriello for what he's done, but what I will say though is that, granted, he never won a Stanley Cup under the current cap under the current cap situation and whatever it is, or in the cap era rather. But the way he's constructed his roster, numbers wise, is off the charts.
Oh, without a doubt.
Numbers wise.
Oh, well, Bo Horvath just to begin with. Now.
Well, yeah, exactly. But we'll get into that later on, if not another time. And also keep in mind too, Ian, you brought up how they needed to pay K'Andre Miller too. He's a restricted free agent, so he'll probably get one of those, pre-big Charlie McAvoy deals. He'll probably get that bridge deal or whatnot. But again, with $15 million, you do not have that much to play with, and you're going to have no choice but to trade for someone there, or someone's going to have to go, or you might have to trade away. Again, you're probably not going to trade a guy with control. But you might. It's not out of the question where you might start the season with Jimmy Vesey on the top line on the right side come 2023-24. It might just be just like after Vetrano jumped ship, Kopp jumped ship, Strome took a big deal out in Anaheim. And Tyler Mott even too. He even got paid. Right. So, and I know you guys also want Tyler Mott back. Who doesn't? Tyler Mott was fantastic and played great for the Rangers. But at the price tag that he's at, no shot. And you're also trying to navigate too 3.641667 for a fourth line center. Now, granted, Casey Cizikas was paid a lot of money. He was, but it was stretched out in term, right? No problem. But 3.6 for a fourth line center is, I think that might just be the highest paid fourth line center in all of hockey. And that's a lot because now, again, with the cap not jumping as high as most people thought, these are the let's see. I'm actually intrigued before we get to the Devils because I want to pull up what DeLuca said here. You said that all with salt in the world that he chose Manhattan, not the island. You know what? I'll be honest with you, DeLuca. If Panarin signed with the Islanders, it would have been about $13 million. And the team, he took nearly $2 million less because his girlfriend or his wife or his fiance or whatever it was thought that Manhattan was better for her modeling career. Okay, so that was the big
you
thing.
want to drive on the LIE, Joey?
Oh,
you want to drive into Manhattan on the LIE? I guess that's what she probably thought of.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what she thought of. Yeah. No.
I mean, if our old friend Nick Partain was here, he was probably more salty about Panarin than Joey is.
I was gonna say, yes, I was gonna say he and Tyler Riddell, that's for sure. They were very, 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 very salty about that. I was happy, and like I said, well, I wasn't happy, but I was kind of relieved when I looked and really did the math. I want to see here just before we move on. I want to see the other free agents in terms of a right winger. You look at, let's see, David Pastrnak. No, he's going to get paid. DeBrincat, he's a restricted. Sean Monahan, no, he's injury prone, injury riddled. Milan Lucic, no, not for the top line. Kyle Pozo, years ago. Timo Meier, no. Jason Zucker, no. Gustav Nyquist, no. Jesper Bratt, no. Patrick Hornquist, no. You're screwed. That's pretty much what it comes down to. Unless you go towards.
I mean, I would love Alex DeBrincat, but he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's also a restricted free agent too. That's not happening.
Maybe there's a name on there that we haven't heard of yet.
Let's hear it
for the summer. Oh, I don't have a name on my mind.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, listen. I listen. If you needed someone, on the left side, you could have gone fairly cheap with Evgeny Dadonov, but again, he doesn't really fit that mold of a first line guy, and he shoots left too. You need someone that shoots right and whatnot. But listen, we know other right wingers that have shot left, but it's their offside and whatever. But
I mean, we've said it before that there's going to be a lot of tough decisions going forward. Someone is going to. I mean, some fans are going to be annoyed. Maybe there's going to be some beloved fan favorite of ours that is just going to be chopped off, and maybe it's not for the best, but maybe cap-wise, that's what they're going to have to do. Maybe one of the younger players is going to go, maybe not exactly the kid line, unless he starts picking it up. I don't know what Vitaly Kravtsov's future is really here on the team.
Yeah.
Well, Kravtsov's coming off the books anyways. I mean, unless they pay him, which at this point I don't think they are.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think the question mark becomes Lafreniere, potentially becomes a casualty.
Yep. It's like the jury's still out on those guys. That's what the tough part about it is like you've seen spurts from them.
Maybe you start. Maybe I don't want to say maybe you start looking. If you start having to look at the dump defenseman, maybe you start looking at Ryan Lindgren,
which I hate.
Which I hate, but like that's where the Rangers are at. Like, you're not trading Fox, you're not trading Keandre Miller. Trouba's wearing your C. He's not going anywhere. Obviously, no one's taking anybody off your third defensive pairing. So where exactly are you turning? Right? Yeah. I mean, no one's taking Panarin. I mean, I'm sure anybody would take Panarin. I mean, he's not being traded. They're not trading Zibanejad. They're not trading Kreider. They're not trading
4 guys with no movements. We could forget about.
Not even that, but like even if it was even if you had to throw a name out there just to even for pure conjecture, right? And you start throwing out like people, they're gonna look at you like you have 10 heads if you start throwing Philip Heal's name out there. So it's it's Lafreniere, it's Lindgren, it's I mean, you don't want to start throwing those names out there because you're like, oh no, he's untouchable. Well, no, they're not untouchable.
No, someone. That's what I'm
saying. They're I don't want to say they're the worst of the best, but that's the best. I guess that's the key way to put it if you want to put it into terms.
Or what you do here is that, again, you also have the ability to trade a Braden Schneider who still has 2 years left on his deal and potentially package him up with a top prospect and get a winger. It's very possible if you have the defensive prospects in the pipeline that can be, that can make that leap. It's possible. Listen, things have to be in play. A lot of things that I see Mike does not want, but guess what? Something has to give. And that's the problem. Listen,
well, you either have two scenarios where, like what Ian said, is Lindgren going to be the casualty, and then you're having him plus some other guys packaged for a winger and whatnot, and then you move Braden Schneider up to the second pairing with Trouba, or you have the flip side. Schneider and a couple other younger prospects are packaged for a winger in that scenario. I think whether it's this offseason, whether it's down the line, I think those tough decisions are going to have to come around. But I mean, right now, I'll just leave this little segment. My final thought on it is, for now, that'll be future me's problem to think about. I'll enjoy for now Tarasenko. This hopefully what's going to be the stretch run. That hopefully can be pretty enjoyable, and you hope you get to the playoffs, and you've seen the track record with Tarasenko and a really good playoff record, and you hope that you ride that playoff stretch really well, ride that production really well, and hopefully they have a positive run to the rest of the season.
Mike, he was one of the reasons why that the Blues won the Stanley Cup in 2019. Yep. It was him. And it was, of course, the Conn Smythe winner and Ryan O'Reilly.
I think he's got like 40 goals in the playoffs lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. So you need some playoff experience. Boy, did you get it, and did you hit the jackpot big? There's no doubt. But again, my final thought on this is that the Rangers are going to have some tough decisions. Who knows if they are going to make that jump now or in the offseason, because something's got to give. Is this enough? I don't believe so, because I'm very curious to see also what Carolina does, what Pittsburgh does, and really most notably, what Boston does. That is what they have a lot of work to do, the Rangers, but they can't do it. They need the other teams to do it around them in order for them to move forward, in my opinion. And the same thing goes with a Pittsburgh. The same thing goes with a Carolina. The same thing goes with the Islanders. Whoever the case is, right? Unless you're looking long-term, like how Lou Lamoriello did with Bo Horvat. You look ahead, or you look toward whatever it is, but you got to look and see what's going to happen with Boston too, because they're another team that has the ability to just make these massive trades and get these guys in and maneuver the salary cap, whatever, but they also have the prospects too to deal with. So,
and just to segue also, sure. I mean, even if you have the team, my God, this Metropolitan Division is just loaded, and it seems like going to be for a while.
Yeah, and you know what? And Mike, we didn't even say this too. The Devils, we brought this up too. We said earlier, the Devils right now, they've got so many different players that they can trade. They've got so much cap space to work with. And they are a team on the rise. And right now, if the playoffs were to end today, it would be Devils, Rangers. Devils get game 6 or game 7 in New Jersey if that were to if the season were to end today. And right now, Jack Hughes is week to week, as Rob DeLuca says. He's fine, but he's far from fine. What we also know is that Timo Meier has been linked to the Devils because of the asking price that the San Jose Sharks want for Meier in return. And keep in mind also is that Timo Meier is making right now, I think, a little over $6.5 million. But keep in mind that something that diminishes the return is the qualifying offer for Timo Meier if he were to be qualified. His qualifying offer is $10 million. He's making $6 million right now. He's restricted free agent with arbitration eligible. They've got the prospects. They've got the picks to trade the Devils, and now is the time to make the move. And again, this is something else. I look at it from the Rangers' perspective. You know, the Devils have so much more to work with than the Rangers do. And right now in the points, the Devils are, I think, 5 or 6 points or even 7 points ahead?
6.
Okay. So, and Ian is muted. So 6 points.
Sorry. No, 6
That's
points.
okay. That's okay. That's okay.
But also,
it's all good.
But also isn't, I mean, they're the highest paid player on the Devils roster right now that's making the most is Dougie Hamilton, I believe, at $9 million, right?
Yeah. And
they
again,
they don't even have anybody at 10 plus.
No.
And they haven't had to pay Hughes yet. They haven't had to pay
No, Hughes is being paid now. Hughes and Hischier combined 15.25, and then they've got Andre Blatt.
And then Brad's going to be this offseason.
Exactly, yeah. So, they've got, and then they also have they still have on the dead cap about $2.4 million Andreas Janssen on the buried penalty there, and they also have Jonathan Bernier on the LTIR, whose contract's going to expire at the end of this year. They're in prime position to get Meier plus if they really wanted to. And right now everything is working for them. But again, if I'm a Rangers fan, I'm very afraid of this Devils team because they can take you out. And not only can they take you out, but also, again, going back to our point earlier with the Rangers, how many more moves can Chris Drury make to kind of get past this team? Let's look at the Devils for a second. Ian, I want to start with you here. Jack Hughes is week to week. So some of the reports are saying, but Rob DeLuca says he could not be more fine, literally traveling on the road trip. But again, I'm going to go with.
I'm just curious why he would be week to week then.
Exactly. I'm very confused as to why Lindy Ruff would say he's week to week, yet he's traveling on the road trip. But hey, listen, crazier things have happened.
Well, he's just a healthy scratch?
I don't think so. But again, where's Rob DeLuca when we need him? He's watching Family Feud right now. What do you think here, Ian?
Listen, I think there's a reason that the Devils have had the success that they've had against the Rangers this year. They're a young, feisty team. And like I said at the start of this conversation, was that the Rangers have been very Jekyll and Hyde, and that includes the goaltender too. I mean, Shesterkin has been better of late. Halak arguably has been the better goaltender at least the last few weeks, since the All-Star break, or even leading into the All-Star break. I just think that with the Devils, it's hard to argue, with the type of players and the talent that they have. I mean, Hughes is playing like an MVP. This is the Jack Hughes that the Devils knew they were getting when they drafted him 1 overall. Yep. Nico Hischier, his issues has been health. He's been healthy. Sharon Govich, Dougie Hamilton, Tomas Tatar. I mean, you go Severson.
John Marino, big trade that he is one of the reasons why this team is the way it is because
Severson, right? We've been saying for a couple of years now, and even this is when even DeLuca co-hosted with us, that the Devils were going to be a team on the rise. Like when they got out to that hot start, I think it was 2 years ago, where we were all kind of like jumping on the Devils and said, "This is it." Like they're finally, like maybe I think the year after the COVID season.
Yes.
Like this was going to be the time to start being on the lookout for the Devils. Did they have the right guy behind the bench though? In Lindy Ruff, turns out it is, but the talent is there. I mean, they've done such a great job of. It's taken about a decade, but they've finally done what they've needed to in assembling the right talent, and that talent has been healthy. We would definitely be strumming a different type of instrument if anything with Hughes is going to be long term. Then even more so, I think we're going to ring the bell a whole lot more about Timo Meier, but this doesn't surprise me at all. They're a gritty, hardworking Lindy Ruff team, and when you've got a guy like Jack Hughes who's just scoring every night, and lest we forget also Andre Palat, right? You went out there and you signed for a guy with cup-winning experience.
And he was out for a while, too, keep in mind. He was
How-
out for a bit.
I mean, how vital is that to any franchise? So, I mean, like I said, before the acquisition of Tarasenko, and I thought, if they were playing the Devils first round, I mean, I still don't like the fact that they're going to – I would hope, down the stretch that maybe the Rangers as a fan will jump the Devils and maybe the Rangers will have home ice. But the way you got to look at it is that before Tarasenko, I didn't think the Rangers would get out of the first round. Now they definitely have a shot. It's just as a Ranger fan, you did not like what you were seeing in the first 50 games of the year. I mean, yeah, they were competitive. Yes, they were winning games, and yes, they're staying well above the cut line for the playoffs. But at the same time, there's not, when you said to yourself, okay, is this team ready to compete in the playoffs before this move? I didn't think they were. So, kudos to DeLuca and the Devils and doing what they finally need to about staying healthy and acquiring the right pieces last offseason. And we'll see if Timo Meier becomes the next.
Last point here, Mike. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we all expected, like Ian said, this was going to be a team on the rise, and I think they're a little further. They're much further on in their progression than I think we thought they would be this year. I think we probably thought that they're moving up. That maybe they're right around where the Rangers are, if not slightly below in the standings, things like that. Like if we're just looking at the points kind of margin and all that sort of stuff. But they've been much better. They got off to an unbelievable start. Still such a good, like Ian said, good hard-nosed team. And I think a lot of the guys were that team overall, like ahead of that. I think a lot of us expected, they're going to contend for the Metro Division title maybe next year. This is going to be the step up.
I think if they acquire Timo Meier, they without question can contend for just to bring up DeLuca's comment here for a second, saying everything is fine in New Jersey, but they need this move. I think they need this move if A, something's wrong with Hughes, or B, they need that move more to cement themselves as a potential Metro Division contender. I'm not saying that they aren't now, but I think this would put them over the top.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Without question, this Jersey team can dispatch the Rangers in the first round of a series.
You have the space, you have the assets and whatnot. Why not go for it? And Timo Meier, Phil Hughes, to what they already have, my God, that's quite a dangerous team going forward and into the playoffs.
All right, so our final thing. This is either a yes or a no. I'm going to start with you, Ian, first. If the Devils acquire Timo Meier and the standings stay the same, Devils 2, Rangers 3, do the Rangers upset because of the way that 2 and 3, do the Rangers upset the Devils in round 1, yes or no?
No.
Mike?
No.
Wow. Okay, that's a big deal. Rob DeLuca says Timo Meier to the Devils needs to happen or there'll be riots at the Prudential Center, and I will be a participant along with 20,000 other people. Good Lord help you. And then he says everything is fine in New Jersey, but they need this move. That's what he had said. And then DeLuca says filling up the car in New Jersey, by the way, back to Connecticut. Long weekend of work ahead. This might make me hate the Super Bowl. We'll see. Bet heads and bet orange. Good Lord help you. And then he says to conclude his tenure here his night with us, nothing is wrong with Hughes, but they need scoring depth. Okay, DeLuca, you have a safe trip back to Connecticut, buddy. Nothing is wrong with him. Okay, sounds good. I gotcha. You know what that's called? Denial. So let's keep moving forward here, guys. Ian brought up a good point that we did not have on our rundown, but Patrick Kane had a little bit of, let's call it, as DeLuca pointed out, salt regarding the Tarasenko deal. Let's bring you the exact quote. Quote, "It's not like the happiest I've been to hear about a trade. If things are going to happen, that was a team I was definitely looking at, the Rangers, that is. It seems like they kind of filled their void and went ahead and made a deal. So it is what it is," end quote. Ian Schraier, how do you dissect what Patrick Kane was trying to say?
I mean, I think it's been rumored now for a year plus that whether it was here, the Islanders, or the Devils, that he wanted to play in the New York metropolitan area. He's from the area.
Or Buffalo, because he's from Buffalo.
Oh, well, he's from Buffalo. I'm sorry. I was thinking, I don't know why I thought he was more from the metropolitan area. But with Patrick Kane, this doesn't really like. Again, he's been rumored to want to play here,
Yeah.
even though he didn't leak it. I mean, just about every whether it was Saravalli or Dreger or whoever.
And we know how wrong those guys could be too.
They can be, but like I mean, sometimes where there's also smoke, there's fire too. And for Patrick Kane, it just felt like, oh, when were the Rangers going to make the move to bring Patrick Kane to New York? Right? It felt like, okay, get him out of Chicago, let him try to win. Does he need to win one more? No, but also like he, based on his quote, if we continue down the rest of the quote, he was looking to win one more. And the fact now that he's, I don't want to say that he's stuck. I mean, because he spent his entire career with one franchise, and his number 88 will eventually be retired to the rafters of the United Center one day.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's kind of interesting because I think he expected to be traded, and now will he get traded at all? Health has been an issue for him. That was clear, according to Larry Brooks, was a big piece of why the Rangers didn't trade for Patrick Kane. They were very concerned about his health. And the other reason they didn't go after Timo Meier was because the Rangers didn't have the pieces to contend with what the Sharks were looking for. So Tarasenko was the better move for them. I mean, it's even though the whole saying was, oh, Artemi Panarin's now going to finally play with his old line buddy in Patrick Kane. Now he's playing with his line mate buddy from his home country. So it's is it a little surprising coming from somebody of Kane's stature to sound salty like that? Yeah, a little bit. But I think that might just be more out of frustration, out of the struggles that are, and the ongoing struggles that appear to be for the foreseeable future that are coming with the Blackhawks.
Mike, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that quote is like, wow, that's quite a little bit more open than you would expect a lot of star players like him to be with the media when it comes to this sort of stuff. Maybe that's a quote that you would see in the off season, if at all.
Sure.
And for it to come now is like that raises an eyebrow. You want, like Ian said, you wonder if a trade really happens or whatnot. I know he was trying to dispute, the whole aura of the injury and the health and the whatnot. And I'm sure anybody who'd want to trade for him are certainly look into that, and they do their due diligence. So like Ian said, when there's smoke, there is fire in terms of this front, in terms of the injury. So whether it was cost, whether it was that, there were a multitude of different factors that led the Rangers to say it's better to go toward Tarasenko. And they made a pretty good move to go there. That's what it is in the front office. It's sometimes cruel when you look at it in Patrick Kane's point of view and the situation he's in, but you have to pivot, and that's what they did.
Not only do you have to pivot too, this is something crucial is that, we never really got an exact location or an exact destination of where Patrick Kane wanted to go. It was never officially confirmed. There were just plenty of rumors, no real reports, no real sources. We never actually heard. They were all unconfirmed reports or rumors that he wanted to come here to New York, whether it be to the island, whether it be to Manhattan, whether it be to the Devils or potentially the Sabres. We have no idea. We don't know what he wanted to do, because now there are reports out there saying, okay, it could be Colorado, it could be Vegas, it could be Carolina now that might want his services, but at what cost? Because again, he is the one that first off has to okay a trade, number one. And number two, how much does Chicago want back for him, and how much will they accept back? But then again, we also heard other unconfirmed reports too on what potentially he might do, right? And no one knows. No one has a clue, right? And the same thing goes with Jonathan Toews too, because his return is not going to be nearly as much as Kane because Toews' injury history is way worse. And also he did have some mental issues as well that kept him out for a good chunk of, I think, a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, Ian. There was a whole documentary on it too with him. And, thankfully he's all better, knock on wood, he's all better and everything like that. But again, he is breaking down as a hockey player a lot quicker than Patrick Kane is. Now, again, you can't take the Jonathan Toews out of him. It's just, I think the bottom line here is that he's a lot less valuable than Kane. But how much are you really going to get for him? And now with this hip issue for Patty Kane, there's really not much leverage that Chicago has. And because we have no idea what the deal is, there's a lot of the unconfirmed reports that I was trying to say before I pivoted, is that both Tays and Kane may potentially re-sign at a extremely low average annual value for 1 year, and they would be trade bait for themselves to maximize the return to Chicago to help out their franchise. Now, if that happens, then a lot of teams pivot, because Horvat was the number one guy on the trade in trade Santra. Never happened because he went to the Islanders. Tarasenko's gone, went to the Rangers. Timo Meier probably going to go to the Devils. So now where do these other teams go, like Carolina? Because they had acquired Max Pacioretty for that exact reason. Now he's gone with he played 2 games, and then he retore the Achilles that he tore in the offseason. So Carolina's got some moves. Vegas, they don't know about Mark Stone if he's ever going to come back, because he's got back surgery, and he's been walking operation since he came over from Ottawa. And you also have Colorado too, missing Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, the list of Valeri Nichushkin for a little bit. The list goes on. There's a lot of things here that, these teams may get desperate where, but it all depends on Kane, because he's got no movement. And there's no way that he, along with Chicago, are going to let them, they will get what they deserve for Patrick Kane. He is one of the best players that have ever suited up for the Hawks. I'm very intrigued to see what happens there, and in the next couple of weeks, and I think when we're on next Friday, it's going to be a little more telling about hockey trade deadline. So we'll definitely we'll have to keep an eye out on all of this trade center rumors. Guys, let's keep moving forward here. Our last topic is Mike Szabo's favorite topic. It is St. John's Red Storm basketball, and that's exactly where we're going to go towards. And we are going to throw it over to Mike Szabo, because we need to hear his grievances about the head coach, Mike Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, this week was kind of just rock bottom in that, they lose again to Butler, very close game. They thought Joel Soriano had the game-tying buzzer beater there, wound up goes to review. It was just late, thanks to the tip on the inbounds and whatnot. They lose a heartbreaker, and that, again, another double-digit lead loss. It was at some point in the game, how many times we've seen this year, at some point in a game, they wind up having a double-digit lead, and they wind up blowing it as the game goes on and on. It's just a hectic, chaotic brand of basketball that just is not working right now. They keep on going back again to the blowing leads. They wind up not having timely possessions, not having timely baskets when they need to. They don't manage the clock well on certain possessions, and take the clock down, and then you get a shot off, things like that. 3-point defense, we always talk about, is always an issue. We can all go on and on about the rotations as well. I think injury kind of forced it, but AJ Storr playing more has been a welcome sight. He's been a bright spot despite all the losses and whatnot. He's played really well. Joel Soriano continues to be a bright spot as well, but they just have a lot of issues scoring and really defending well. I think going back to what we said last week, Joey, I think it's hard to find at least one thing that this team really excels with. They haven't defended well this year. You have little spurts here or there, but they don't play a complete 40 minutes on that side of the ball, or on the offensive side of the ball either. I think the Seton Hall game that you and I were at earlier on in Carnesecca Arena, where, Seton Hall, I think they switched to sort of a zone defense and whatnot.
It was a full zone, yeah.
Yeah, and St. John's just couldn't figure it out. We mentioned the fouls. Seton Hall was in such foul trouble. St. John's couldn't take advantage of that. It's just so many issues all wrapped up into one. The avalanche just keeps on coming, and this week I think was just rock bottom.
Mike is too nice. He really is.
Ian, do you even want to touch? I don't even know if I even want to touch on this because this.
I mean,
do you want to moderate this, Ian? I mean,
no. I mean, I just like we could sit here and have a whole 3-year debate about the tenure of Mike Anderson as head coach of the St. John's men's basketball program. And
I think it's worse. And I don't mean to interrupt you, Ian, but I had brought this up, right? I had brought this up with a few guys in the Seton Hall media room, right? I won't mention names. We said point blank, the Mike Anderson era is worse than the Chris Mullin era, and that is a whole new low. Why? Why?
Well, because at least they were successful to a degree under
They
Mullin.
made the tournament.
Yeah. I mean, they were part of the first four and got, that game
annihilated.
Here's the thing about his tenure. And you thought there was a glimmer of a moment early on where it was going to start turning around, right?
Oh yeah, the 2020 national championship. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then
when they were on their way to beat Creighton, and then COVID decided to hit. Yes, they were on their way to a national championship.
We were making a run, Joey.
I know. We were in the lead. I know.
Joey, please stop this madness before it gets really
30. Listen, 38 to 30 will forever live on. Go on.
That's it.
Yeah, but I mean, there was that one glimmer where you thought in this tenure that you thought that this program was going to start turning around. They were going to start finding success. And then that's when they gave him the extension. And then ever since then, it's just gone downhill. At this point in year 4, this isn't a project. This isn't a rebuild anymore. You've had time to bring in your recruits, to build in your philosophy of how you want to play. And it's really just not gone well at all, as an understatement. They continue to not play well in big games. They continue to not even come close to saying we're closing the gap on the top half of the Big East. They haven't had, one of those, upsets that you see at least once a year for a while now, and they've never turned that into anything consistent. I just think, just to put it in a simple metric, you see how bad they are in quad 1 games this year. They haven't had a notable win. And it goes back to, Joey, we could go on and on about the schedule and how they're not tested. And
I will say this though, Mike, and just because I don't want to miss out on this point, is that I think the key, at least for this year for St. John's, okay, at least for this year, in terms of their competitiveness, 2 names come to mind right off the bat. The fact that, 2 points. The fact they lost Julian Champagny, the fact that he didn't come back for one more year, made a big difference for them. And the fact that Andre Curbelo has been a massive bust. Yeah. I think that's really because now that Curbelo has almost become really a cancerous player for that program. Posh Alexander has strictly been a one-dimensional player. I will give credit to Joel Soriano. He's really been the one bright spot for that team. Obviously, losing Mathis has hurt, but I mean, this is I always go back to the same points about Mike Anderson and his hiring. Like, he came from Arkansas. I know he wasn't the first option, but he couldn't win in the SEC. And now Eric Musselman's got that team pretty much contending for the NCAA tournament every single year with basically what were at the time his players. And now he comes to Queens to lead a program. He decides to build it through the city with attracting players like Julian and Posh and Dylan. I mean, talk about an underwhelming player who came in with such bright spots in Dylan Adaiwusu. I fail to see, and then I guess this goes back to the whole report from Adam Zagoria about whether or not his job was safe, and saying, there's no reason to think he won't be back for another year. And then Zach Braziller puts out a report completely countering that, saying there's going to be change. I just don't see how there isn't change. I mean, they've progressively gotten worse each year. And we could sit here blue in our face in terms of scheduling, and clearly that's changing a little bit next season, because they're going to go down to the tournament in Charleston. They've got Texas Tech coming to the Garden. Like, they've got some quality games on the schedule finally. But by the same token, like, they're not competitive. Like, I mean, they went to Creighton and got their doors blown off. They always have that one game against UConn, but obviously Dan Hurley's doing a phenomenal job of choking every year.
It's true.
It's so true, man. I'm so tired of it at UConn, but I'm not going to sit there and get onto a UConn rant right now. But to make a long story short, is just they've progressively gotten worse year over year.
Yeah.
This whole 40 minutes of hell, like, it hasn't mattered. It
Well,
hasn't
it's
mattered.
been 40 minutes of hell for the Saints.
How many times have they you said it earlier, Mike. How many times have they not played a 40-minute game? They've led at the half. They led by 6-8 points. I mean, you look at the game at Seton Hall where they led early and collapsed in the second half. There's just, and I'm sure Joey can continue on this, but it's just there has to be some kind of change. Has to be. I mean, you look at all the other coaches right now around the Big East. Creighton, Xavier, who's at Marquette, who's who's at UConn. You look up and down the conference, aside maybe from Patrick at Georgetown, who's just struggling to do anything right. But at the same time, I mean, you got to look at your competition and say, this is where we need Providence. Like, this is where we need to be. And St. John's is not close.
And not only that, this is the last point, just since we do have to wrap up. The last point here, Ian, you brought up about the other coaches in the conference. Look at Shaheen Holloway. He's dealing with players that are not his own, and he's outpacing a lot of these other teams. Granted, they may not be able to close out games sometimes or whatnot, but again, you look against Creighton, they had a 6-point lead. Unfortunately, they then lost, but again, it was expected. Tomorrow's game, St. John's and Providence, I think will be kind of the final toe in shoe type thing, or foot in the shoe, where these fans might seriously have an uproar. I don't know. I think that's where I'm going to leave it off at. And I think that we should definitely leave it off at that, because next Friday, there will still be a few more games that St. John's can kind of, and then we'll be previewing the Creighton game as well the next day, which could be an absolute abomination. But hey, listen, like I said, to just say
Joey,
about
what's before we sign off, what's your prediction for tomorrow?
Oh, my prediction tomorrow, St. John's, they'll be up by 12 and then they'll lose by 23. That's just me. But that's where I'll leave it. Just to kind of say about Zagoria's report, there's 11.7 million reasons why that Mike Anderson could potentially be back. Guys, our show is complete. Let's go to our kudos. Mike Szabo, kudos, take it away.
Well, sticking, I guess, on the St. John's front, and since we were kind of mentioning him, and Joel Soriano, I think he got named to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar watch list.
Yes, sir.
Coming up. So small little token of news, but just want to congratulate him. He's put together a phenomenal year despite everything else of what we talked about for the last 15 minutes and whatnot, and what St. John's basketball is. Just him individually. Hats off to the improvement he's made, the commitment he's made to himself, improving himself and whatnot, and being the best player he himself can be on the floor. Just phenomenal to him, in that he's up for all these recognitions and all these awards. Hats off to him. 19 double-doubles this year. Just phenomenal production from him. Hats off to Joel Soriano.
Ian Schraier, it's all you.
We spoke earlier a little bit about Brian Dable, so I'm not going to give my kudos there, but just congratulations again on Coach of the Year. I'm going to stick within the college basketball realm, but take it to D2 for a second. And my kudos are going to go to Ronnie Silva, a Delphi men's basketball point guard, who is 2 points short of 2,000. They play tomorrow at
4.
Southern.
Isn't he 4?
2. He's 2 points short of 2,000. He would become one of only 2 players in Delphi men's basketball history to eclipse that mark. And he could also tomorrow become the school's all-time leading scorer if he drops 16. So record certainly on watch alert for the Adelphi star point guard who is in his final season with the Panthers. So I expect him to at least get to 2,000 tomorrow. So in advance, congratulations, Ronnie.
My kudos goes out to Kevin Durant. Why? Because he's now on like team number 17. And the biggest thing also with Kevin Durant is that he's ring chasing. He's a bum, and what he wants to do is just win, and he simply can't win. He's only won one time in his career with the Golden State Warriors, and he's a forever loser. That's pretty much the bottom line. My kudos goes out to him. Also, my sub kudos, or kudos 1A, if you will, goes out to the man that decided to, was, from what we gathered, was either drunk or on his telephone in the city of Detroit and hit Calgary defenseman Rasmus Andersson hit by a car. Kudos to you, my friend. Why? Because stop texting and driving. Stop drinking and driving. Watch out where you are. Thank God for Rasmus Andersson that he is okay. He was on a scooter when Calgary was in Detroit. He's okay. He's good to go. So my kudos goes to every single person there to get that person off the street. Seriously. Because that is a despicable act that happened there in Detroit. Ladies and gentlemen, one final time, Ian Schraier, Joey Jarzynka saying so long, and we will see you all next Friday night right here on the Eastern Observer. So long, everyone.